June the 15th, 1399. You can hear a distant bell tolling as the first light of dawn glitters on the Vistula River, an industrious friar. Somewhere in the outskirts of Kraków, hailing the arrival of the new day, long before the priests in our own cathedral have risen from their beds. It has been a long time since I noticed such things, the little things of beauty that season our days of war and toil and make them almost palatable. But as I lie here, counting the days until the arrival of my first child, I notice them more and more. Perhaps they never went away. Perhaps being confined to this bed has simply opened my eyes to them again. Better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and a striving after wind. As I write these words of the preacher, the mighty bells of Wawel Cathedral finally toll for the morning. Incredible, really, how the sound of those bells is wedded both to the worst and the most wonderful memories of my life. I came to this city when I was 11 years old, a lonely princess from Hungary, surrounded by guards, a stranger in a strange land. This kingdom of Poland, which my late father had left as my inheritance, was a country on the brink of ruin. A civil war raged, with every duke and petty lord laying claim to the throne, and my hand in marriage as his queen. It was not a prospect I longed for, but, on the other hand, coming here meant that I would finally get to meet William again. My William, the Habsburg Prince of Austria. We had been promised to each other since before I could remember. Once I sat upon the throne of Poland, we would be wedded at last. As the mountains came to an end, and the bells of Wawel Cathedral sang from Kraków in the distance, it was him I thought of. What I wouldn't give to be so young and naive again. It was at the end of the war that William arrived outside the castle gates. When I heard the news, it was as though a pulse of sunlight came from my heart, and I ran to meet him, only to see him surrounded by my own guards. I threw myself at the gate, but the guards pulled me away. And William disappeared in a crowd of uniforms and glittering steel. The Archbishop, his otherwise kind eyes, gray and hard, spoke almost in a whisper, as if the words stung his throat. Your marriage to Prince William has been annulled, my queen. We have found a more suitable king for Poland. His name is Jogaila, Duke of Lithuania. I felt my heart shatter. The noblemen of Kraków had never intended to honor my vows to William, as they didn't want Poland to fall under Habsburg influence. And so they had made a secret deal with Jogaila of Lithuania. A deal they now expected me to fulfill. For a long time I insisted that I would marry my William, but after many days and nights, in tears and in prayer, I could see no other way out than to break that vow. I would trade my own happiness for the happiness of the Polish people. I would marry Jogaila, the pagan duke, and do my duty as queen. God forgive me. Jogaila. It was like the name of a demon in those early days. He was a handsome man in his way. He had a face of stone and steel. and eyes like frozen pools. It was not until months later that I saw his features soften, his eyes becoming warm as he looked at me. His child bride, the key to his political legacy. I was not immediately swayed by this pagan that the nobles had saddled me with. He was not a man of the heart. He thrived in the royal court and on the battlefield, and every choice he made was to further his political goals. He was nothing like my William. But as the months went by, I began to warm to him. Before ascending to the Polish throne, he was baptized. And he swore to Christianize the whole of Lithuania. He even changed his name to Władysław Jagiełło, to sound more Polish, more Christian. But to me, he would always be Jogaila. As ruthless as he was to his opponents, he was always a good husband. My words, whether private or given as political advice, mattered to him, and I often felt that we were equals on the throne. What a strange, powerful feeling. After the Civil War, our first aim was to rebuild what had been lost. Nowhere was this more necessary than in the province of Galicia. And so we traveled there, together, to right the wrongs of the recent past. As the noblemen of Halych surrendered, the last embers of insurrection in Galicia went out. Poland was at peace, and Jogaila was now the unquestioned king of the country. With Poland unified and Lithuania on its way to being Christianized, it seemed as though nothing could stand in our way. Unfortunately, Jogaila was not the only warrior duke that his house had spawned. Since a king's word is supreme, who can say to him, "What are you doing?" So says the preacher. Vytautas, Jogaila's cousin, disagreed. Back in Lithuania, he was building an alliance of noblemen who would rather have him as duke than Jogaila. And people were flocking to him. Many of the Lithuanian nobles were disillusioned with Jogaila's reign. The few times the king went back to Lithuania, he spent his days converting the people to Christianity en masse and burning pagan holy sites. The things we do for the Pope's approval. Vytautas was no pagan zealot, but he knew an opportunity when he saw one. As the son of Kęstutis, a former Duke of Lithuania who had been killed on Jogaila's orders, he also had a bone to pick with his cousin. That personal mission of revenge resonated with the Lithuanian people, even though Vytautas, being quite accustomed to that ruthless political climate, used it mostly for political gains. But, as I said, Vytautas knew an opportunity when he saw one. Vytautas, much like Jogaila, was at heart a pragmatist. Apparently that is what they called themselves. The men who would shake hands with their father's murderer for a bit of land and a slightly fancier title. As total victory proved impossible, Vytautas settled for a partial one. He would become Duke of Lithuania, claiming Jogaila's old title, but Jogaila would remain his overlord. And with the stroke of a pen, the Lithuanian civil war came to a close. For all the bloodshed we had seen, I believe that something was born that day that will eclipse any of their military victories. A true union between our countries. It happened gradually, But it dawned on me at last why I had been put in this role as queen. I had been placed there by Providence to preserve this union, this bond of peace between two countries and their peoples. It is a beautiful thing, peace. A rare thing. A golden seam that glitters only for a moment in the fabric of reality. If I leave no other legacy than having kept this union intact for a few more years, I shall have served my people well. The Teutonic Order had its roots in the Crusades in the Holy Land, but now their mission was to Christianize the pagans of Eastern Europe, or die trying. Most of the time, though, it was pagans who died. After over 100 years in the region, the sincerity of the Knights' original mission had been nearly forgotten. These so-called crusaders were now playing for land and power and calling it God's will. That is why they allied with Vytautas. He promised them the lands of Samogitia, home to some of the last pagans in Europe. But when Vytautas made peace with us and refused to cede the region to the Order, they were outraged. The Knights now lay siege to the Lithuanian town of Vilnius, and Jogaila and Vytautas hurried to the rescue. It was to be the first time that they fought side by side. On that day, the combined forces of Poland and Lithuania drove the Teutons back to their Prussian domains. But more importantly than the victory in the field, was the fact that the alliance between Jogaila and Vytautas, the former rivals, had held fast. Those imposing men eyed each other after the battle, never exchanging a word. And I believe, realizing at last that they could accomplish things together that neither could do on their own. Though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. So says the preacher. June the 18th, 1399. A gift arrived for me today. A silver cradle. For the mother of two kingdoms. Courtesy of Vytautas. I could not help but laugh as it was carried into the room. Such a work of beauty. From a man who appreciates nothing but war and power, wine and women. Vytautas. I am not sure he ever gave up on his dream of being sole ruler of Lithuania. He certainly never acts like he is Jogaila's subordinate. For the past few years, Jogaila has been rebuilding our war-torn kingdoms, while I have worked to prevent further conflicts from breaking out. All the while, Vytautas has gone on the offensive. He has now gone off to conquer Tatar Ruthenia, where he has befriended a deposed Khan, one Toktamish. Together, he claims, they are going to conquer their way to the Black Sea. June the 22nd, 1399. I have received no news of Vytautas' escapades in Ruthenia for some days now. I pray that he is successful. And yet, I fear that his insatiable hunger for power will be the downfall of everything I have striven for. But for now, I must not worry about Vytautas. I have more pressing worries. And my mind is racing with fear and anticipation. My body swells and aches and changes. To walk is exhausting, and to lie down is no relief. For days I have written in this journal to keep my mind occupied. But now I can barely even do that. Any day now, I will give birth to my first child, Jogaila's firstborn. The heir of two kingdoms, whose union I have worked so hard to foster. I look out of the window, breathing the crisp morning air. Kraków is beautiful in its thin dress of mist and sunlight. The Vistula glitters. Birds sing their praises to God from trees and bushes and tufts of grass. And for just a short moment, it seems as though every thread in the fabric of reality is made of gold, glowing and glittering like never before. Any day now.
June the 3rd, 1410. It has been years since I last entered this room. I always expect her to be lying there, with our daughter on her breast, in that bed now covered with dust. Smiling, glowing the way only they can who know in their bones that their days on earth are numbered. My Jadwiga. Her heart was broken one time too many after our daughter died, only 4 days old. Jadwiga was sick with grief, and with a fever that would not pass. But despite it all, she held true to her duty through that youthful twilight. She told me to marry again, to marry a granddaughter of the legendary Polish king Casimir the Great. This, she said, would strengthen my claim to Poland's throne once she was gone, and prevent another civil war. I had broken her heart when I took her from Prince William. I had broken it again when the child I gave her died in her arms. To obey this desire was the least I could do. She died just 2 weeks after our daughter. Much has changed since then. Poland and Lithuania have grown stronger together. Now, the time has come for us to not only survive, but to conquer our old enemies. We are at war again with the Teutonic Order. But we no longer cower from their discipline and military prowess. We strive to match it. We march now on Marienburg, the Teutonic capital. Once the dust settles on the ruins of that fortress, the union of Poland and Lithuania, the wedding ring of Jadwiga, will stand stronger than ever before. We were never able to take the fortress of Marienburg. But in the end, it did not matter. The Teutons were crushed. Their masters lay slain on the fields of Grunwald, and the Order would never truly recover. We held a wild celebration. Vytautas was more drunk with pride, joy, and wine than anyone else after that Tatar maneuver that helped win the battle. After a few hours, I could no longer stand the heat of that great tent. The shouting and the music and the laughter of so many victorious men. I slipped out into the darkness, down to a small stream near our camp. I sat there in silence, giving thanks to God for our victory, and listening to the murmur of the stream and the cold evening wind. I could not help but think of her then, my Jadwiga, who made all this possible. I lost you too soon, and Poland lost its brightest star. But now, at last, I know that your dream will live on, where you could not. I could hear a bell tolling then. A friar, somewhere in the distance, hailing the arrival of the night with that deep, resounding music. It has been a long time since I noticed such things. The little things of beauty that season our days of war and toil, and make them almost palatable.